14th, 2021 to order. Roll call.
Grillo here. Hannah here.
Sullivan here.
Grillo here.
Lorick here.
Holdani here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Item number 3, approval of minutes for August 24th, 2021. If there's any questions or discussion, otherwise I'll entertain a motion.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of August 24th, 2021.
Holdani seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Holdani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler abstains.
Item number 4, significant common council actions. Carrie?
Council approved the following. An ordinance rezoning the properties at 8100 and 8146 South 27th Street and 8100 South Orchard Way to RM1 multifamily residential plan unit development. An ordinance rezoning the property at 441 West Ryan Road from B4 Highway Business to RM1 multifamily residential with a conditional use permit for multifamily residential dwellings in excess of 4 dwelling units per structure. A resolution approving a certified survey map submitted by Timothy Grayman, All-Star Buick GMC, for the properties at 7020 and 7070 South 27th Street, and also approved and awarded the architectural and engineering design for the Abishine Park Beer Garden to Plunkett Rasich Architects for their stated services fee of $108,000 plus reimbursables. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 5, Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal actions. Carrie?
The Board of Housing and Zoning Appeals heard 2 appeal cases. The first appeal was for the property at 321 West College Avenue. This was for the purpose of ruling on the interpretation of a home-based business. Part 1, the Board of Housing and Zoning Appeals upheld the decision made by and stated within the Oak Creek Zoning Administrator's denial letter of May 7, 2021, stating no advertisement shall be placed in any media containing the address of the property. Part 2 of their action rules by majority vote that the home-based business services presented by the appellant, which includes firearms license transfers as part of the services provided, as being acceptable services for falling under the designation of consulting services and is considered to be a permitted home occupation and approved home-based business. The second case was for the property at 1299 West College Avenue for Branded Steer. They reviewed a request for a variance, which states in part from their approval of March 23, 1992, that there was a variance granted for 36 feet to the north and 32.5 feet to the west to allow for the total use of the property. The board made the determination that the variance request for 10.5 feet was denied. No exceptional circumstances, and there were other options that the appellant could pursue to be in conformance with the required setbacks. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 6, Quarterly Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission actions. The next report for that will be October 26th. That brings us to new business. 7A is a plan review to review the site, building, and related plans submitted by Andrew Cromie, Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for an accessory structure on East Middle School property at 9330 South Shepherd Avenue. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a proposal for the East Middle School. You'll be seeing 3 of these this evening. For East and West Middle School, it's pretty much the exact same building that's being requested. And for the high school, something similar. It's a 30 by 20 single-story accessory building. It'll be south of the ball fields for the storage of athletic equipment, and it meets all setbacks in the proposed location. It's designed to meet the existing dugouts and concession stand that's on the property that was reviewed previously by the Plan Commission. You'll see it's just south of the varsity softball field that's highlighted in blue on the screen, little blue box. This is the proposed footprint, and these are the proposed elevations. The one thing that I will note for the materials, while they're proposing white and gray LP smart panels, that's actually not listed as an acceptable primary exterior material per code, so that requires a 3/4 majority approval. For your edification and to remember, all of us to remember, there was a request that was reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission for the Brentwood Animal Hospital facility that incorporated the use of LP Smart Panel. The Plan Commission did approve by 3/4 majority the use of that material. Again, on the screen, these are just to match what's already existing. There's no signage proposed. The bottom left corner that shows the image, that's what's existing out there. With that, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to make any comments?
Yep, thank you, I appreciate it.
Sorry, just need your name and
Oh,
address.
sorry, Andy Cromie, Finance Officer for the district, 7630 South 10th Street. I just want to note, and as Carrie mentioned, A, B, and C are all ours. Part of our Knights construction plan this year is to have those students build these particular buildings. Hence, the different exterior building material is something that they can work with. We are not professional bricklayers or masons, so to have them lay a cinder block wall is, we would be hiring out for that. So this is an opportunity for our Knights construction to take students who have worked on homes before and transition it into more of a commercial style building, and to just get access to a different learning opportunity to make them more prepared for the outside world should they choose to pursue something in the construction industry.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns from the commission? We'll start on my left with Commissioner Hannah.
No, I have nothing.
I have nothing either.
No questions.
Nothing for me.
I do have a question. Will there be any electricity running to these buildings?
There will be electric in the east and west, I believe. I believe we'll have electric there. I know we will not at the high school. Electric will be hooked up. We have a licensed journeyman electrician on staff who would be doing all the hookup. But our students, just like in Knights Construction, would be running wiring to the location, but again, not tying into the electric. We'll have our on-site electrician do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also have no concerns. As Carrie stated, the material was approved for Brentwood Animal Hospital recently. Then Knights Construction is a great program, so great opportunity for them to do this. With that, if there's no other questions or concerns, we'll accept a motion, please.
Speaker moves that the Planning Commission approves the site plans submitted by Andrew Cromie, Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for the property at 9330 South Shepherd Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant codes requirements remain in effect. 2, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit application.
And before there's a second, I just need to make a slight correction. There's site and building plans. There was an omission of building plans in there as well. My apologies.
To amend as stated. You amended as stated. Carrie?
Amend it.
So the motion was amended to incorporate building plans as well.
Grillo, a second.
Roll call starting with Commissioner Sullivan.
Sullivan, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye. Hannah, aye.
Brings us to 7B, another plan review. Review the site, building, and related plans submitted by Andrew Cromie, Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for an accessory structure on the West Middle School property at 8401 South 13th Street. Carrie?
One point of clarification just for everybody. This particular site is actually on 2 different parcels. So that's why there was an additional parcel that was listed in the staff report. It appears that the building will actually be going on the remnant parcel. So that would be 8461R South 13th Street. Still the same site. Just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear what we're looking at. But again, same structure located on the southwest corner of the drive and parking area for West Middle School. Meets all the location setbacks. It is for the storage of athletic equipment, and it's designed to look exactly like the previous one that we reviewed. just a close-up of where that will be located for everybody who's familiar with the site. You probably won't even notice that it's there unless you're on the site itself. So these are the proposed footprints and elevations, just a little bit of an orientation differentiation from what we looked at for East Middle School. And again, the suggested motion on the screen should be approval for site and building plans. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So this item obviously is very similar to the previous one. Does the applicant have anything additional to add?
Yeah, the only addition I would add to that is the back of West was regraded. It's been reseeded and will be a usable field. If you had been there previously, it was kind of undulated, not really usable for anything. So part of our referendum projects had some leftover dollars, so that was regraded. And will be used for West Middle School for PE, but also for youth programs and recreational soccer and whatever events they're putting out there. So the ability to put something on site for them to store their materials is very helpful to us instead of trucking them around and trying to figure out where they're going to go or where they're going to be stored.
Thank you. We'll move on to the commission, starting from my right with
No questions.
No questions.
Nothing for me. Actually, I do have a question. So how is this going to be secured? You know, this area, and especially in the back of the freeway, is it going to be locked? You know, those teenagers running around it.
Yep, it'll be locked, pretty standard. It's a typical roll-up garage door, so it'll be locked from the interior. And then use of the maintenance door you'll see located in the upper left on the kind of just the drawing on the left-hand side. So it'll be locked, secured, as best as any building can be.
Is there any lighting there that also, are you going to add lighting?
We will not be putting lighting there.
Are you thinking about maybe adding some?
At this point, we haven't thought of that. It is located relatively still close to the building, so there'll be exterior lights from West Middle School that will still shed light on both the roll-up door and close to the side door.
Okay, thank you.
I have no additional concerns or comments. So we'll move for a motion.
Oldani moves that the Plan Commission approves the site plan submitted by Andrew Cromie, Oak Creek Franklin Schools Joint School District for the property at 340 East Putes with the following conditions.
Commissioner Oldani?
Oh, do I have the wrong one? Sorry.
Yes. And please include site and building plans in your motion. Thank you.
Okay, I got it. I'll start over. Oldani moves that the Plan Commission approves the site plan submitted by Andrew Cromie, Oak Creek Franklin School District for the property at 8401, site and building plans amended for the property at 8401 and 8461 South 13th Street with the following conditions: that all relevant code requirements remain in effect, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call starting with Commissioner Carrillo.
Carrillo, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Item 7C, another plan review. Review the site, building, and related plans submitted by Andrew Cromie, Oak Creek Franklin Joint School District for an accessory structure on the Oak Creek High School property at 340 East Putes Road. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only difference between this particular accessory building and the ones that we just previously reviewed is the size, and there is also the option to incorporate a shade structure on the south side of it. So it's an 18 by 10 single-story accessory building. It will actually be replacing something that is currently existing in that location. You'll see it, it's in between the football field and track and the tennis courts. It will be used for the tennis courts, I believe, for the storage of athletic equipment there. Same materials and just a slightly smaller footprint. Again, it's the same LP smart side that we were talking about previously, so that will require 3/4 majority approval by the Plan Commission. And this is what the proposed shade structure would look like. No concerns from staff regarding the use of the metal poles with a shade fabric. This is similar to something that we have actually over at Lake Vista, albeit on a smaller scale, but it does meet all the setback requirements. I should note that in the report, it does say that there's no additional access. The existing access from Groveland would be used for this structure if needed. And as with the previous storage buildings that were reviewed, no additional landscaping is required due to the location. So there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add for this one?
Yep, I'll just add that the storage that we currently have is a bit small. Our tennis coach and the additional users of that are still shuttling some equipment back and forth. So this would just provide us the opportunity to have it stored on site in a closer proximity and use to the teams that will be using it.
Thank you. And we'll open it up to the commission, starting on my left with Commissioner Hanna.
I have no question.
I have no questions, thank you.
Nothing for me.
No questions.
No questions.
I do have a question in regards to the size. So are there other storage areas on site or for the other sports, and this is only for tennis?
There is an approximate 10 by 10 shed there, so that will be removed and this will take the place of that. We've coordinated with our athletic director to ensure everybody involved has had their voice and participation to ensure the size will fit, or size is what is needed.
Okay, thank you.
And I have no other concerns or questions. So we'll take a motion.
I'll go since I already pretty much read it. Oldani moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Andrew Cromie, Oak Creek Franklin School District for the property at 340 East Putes Road with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, starting with me. Lorick, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, I.
Grillo, aye.
And item 7D, a rezoned plan unit development. Review a request submitted by Jessica Guzman, F Street Development Group, Edison M. Berkey Family Trust, and the City of Oak Creek to rezone to and establish a traditional neighborhood development planned unit development on portions of the properties at 4001 East Lake Vista Parkway, 9300 South 5th Avenue, and 4200 East Lake Vista Boulevard. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is part of the Lakeshore Commons development that we had previously discussed. There was a presentation at the end of last year in December before the Plan Commission to introduce you to the project. This is an exciting opportunity for the City of Oak Creek, and we're very pleased to be development partners with the Berkey Trust, who is not represented tonight, and also F Street Development Group and Rinka as part of this development. Currently, there are multiple zonings for these properties. This is for portions of the properties. Unfortunately, our maps are not quite up to date yet with the certified survey map and the change to exclude the park area. But this is for portions of the property that we will be discussing. The proposal is to rezone these portions of the properties to the traditional neighborhood development with a planned unit development. Plan commissioners may recall that this zoning district was new and was recently approved by the Common Council, as was a certified survey map for the properties, kind of dividing this for the future development. There will be additional reviews, so this is the first of many to be coming before the Plan Commission, including, but not limited to, subdivision and condo plats, master landscaping reviews, master lighting reviews, and of course, site building landscaping and other reviews specific to certain portions of the development itself. I'm going to try and keep my remarks a bit brief. We do have the development team here who will be presenting. Some of these images will be overlapping. So this is the concept development plan, and this is just a color rendering giving you a little bit better picture of what is presented for this evening. This is a multi-use, a mixed-use development. There are multiple types of housing options that will be presented for tonight. Amenities for this development are on the screen, and these are also going to be a little bit in flux, but most of the establishment has been for the walking trails themselves, some of the recreation areas, the clubhouse area specifically, and then a smattering of pocket parks, community areas, gardens, and dog parks and seating areas, so that it does provide all of those amenities within the development itself as well as adjacent to Lake Vista Park. What is on the screen right now is giving you an overview of the different types of units that we are going to be seeing in this development. You will have traditional single family. These are going to be smaller units, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. And a villa concept. These are the kind of side-by-side duplexes or condo units that we've seen in the city as well. Also providing some different options that we don't really have many of in the city, including the 3-unit villa, which is basically side by side by side. And we have 2 different options for that. And we have a 6-unit townhouse, an 8-unit townhouse, and a 9-unit townhouse. All of these options for your kind of single-family for-sale product that is in a different configuration than what we've seen in the city. It does fulfill that need that we've been seeing in the different housing areas that we've been studying over the years. And then we also have some rental product, and that will be in your traditional multi-story, multi-family residential development. That's in the center as well as along the southeast corner. Overall, we have about 717 units that are being proposed in all of these buildings. What's on the screen right now are the different single-family options that will be presented for buyers. I'm scrolling through these a little bit quickly because, again, we have some overlap with the developer's presentation. But these are the different options that are going to be presented for sale. These are the townhomes. You'll see that there is kind of that comprehensive design element that's throughout all of the architecture. The multifamily option, again, in multiple buildings, different option types, different bedroom availabilities. And of course, the clubhouse that will incorporate not just the building, the recreation area itself, but there will be an outdoor pool, in-ground pool, and as well as a playground area and ball courts. There may be some kind of programmed or unprogrammed field there as well. People who can play bocce ball or horseshoes or whatever you would want to do on kind of a green space. The concept materials and signage that are before you, these will be incorporated into the conditions and restrictions that will be the next stage of Plan Commission review. We are not recommending that it incorporates the vinyl siding, but that's just for your information this evening. The conditions and restrictions will be obviously a lot more detailed. And then, of course, we have the signage here. Any kind of deviations from code, from the traditional neighborhood development PUD requirements, or other portions of code would be detailed in those conditions and restrictions as well. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to the development team, and I will just say that there is a suggested motion for approval for the Plan Commission's consideration after that presentation.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Jessica Guzman with F Street Development Group. Address is 1134 North 9th Street. Milwaukee. Thank you so much for taking the time to allow us to present to you our PUD concept, which has been put before you for approval. I think just a high-level summary, we've worked really closely with the City Development Department to create a set of guidelines that are going to create really high-quality homes new to the market in Oak Creek and provide a really exciting residential development. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Katie Menakis with Rinka.
Excuse me. Hi, everyone. Katie Menakis, Rinka, 756 North Milwaukee Street in Milwaukee. So this is a site plan similar to what you had seen on Carrie's presentation, just kind of highlighting all the different mix. Here's just an outline showing that, as Jessica said, we've been working closely, so there are no surprises with what we've been presenting, planning and use standards of the following building types. Again, a little bit of repetition here, but single-family homes, multifamily villas, townhomes, and multifamily apartment buildings. Architectural design standards for the single-family homes and multifamily villas, building material standards, amenity standards, and streetscape guidelines. So this, again, examples of the single-family and attached villa or multifamily villa options for the 2 and 3 unit. We include elevations, plans, and options. We're coordinating with a sales team right now, receiving a collection of reservations on these. They're currently on the MLS. We are coordinating the materials and quality to make sure that we, of course, meet high expectations for high-quality materials. So the townhomes and multifamily apartments. In the upper right corner, we show the kind of repetition of a row house. Those are all 2-story or single ranch or raised ranch options. So we offer approximately 5 different types in the townhomes. And then the multifamily, we highlight the A9 block, which are the 2 multifamily buildings in the middle, and then we'll proceed to go to the next pair of 2 after we get to a certain point in construction for the first 2, and then follow with the last 2. So 6 multifamily buildings. Speaking of the materials, this is a combination slide, and it just shows high quality examples of a lot of materials that we've used. We have good experience, longevity, high quality, long lasting, low maintenance. And this just shows the same amenity and signage package, showing that although the lots are reduced in size, it's amenity rich throughout the whole development. A lot of opportunity to connect through and to adjacent parks and multi-use paths in the area. And then the streetscapes have been closely coordinated as well, pedestrian friendly, safe. We have sidewalks. We have bicycle areas designated both in and outside of the streets, and then promotes a great neighborhood feel throughout. That's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. We'll open up to the commission, starting on my right with Commissioner Chandler.
I do have a question in regards to the building materials. So since these properties will be built off of the lake, are the materials of a different type that can deal with high humidity, different impacts due to the water?
They are located far enough that they're not going to be impacted. It's not like certain saltwater conditions that you'd worry about in other areas where there'd be corrosion. These are similar to other projects we've done in the area at Drexeltown Square, and same level of quality, but there's no special consideration for the environment or the adjacency to the lake.
Thank you.
Next? Okay, the 2 concerns I have are the road patterns, how narrow they are. I'm concerned about our fire trucks serving those buildings and getting around and access to those, because they're not quite the same size as a normal car or truck, and I see some major problems with the fire department and getting access to your facility in case there's an emergency.
We feel exactly the same as far as the concern, and we paid close attention and coordinated closely with the fire department and the engineering team to make sure that all accommodations for public streets, private streets, alleys, which I know are relatively new to the community, and this development offers all the required access for all 3 phases of the project, and we plan to continue to work closely to make sure that temporary access is available through construction as areas are occupied.
Have you reviewed this with our fire department?
Yes.
Okay. The next question I'm concerned about is parking. It looks like there's a major problem with parking, especially with a multifamily, when you have 2 or 3 cars per unit. I see a major problem with parking. I see it's off to the south where you have a parking lot, but the people that walk that far to park their car I'm a little concerned. I feel that's a little too congested and tight.
Sure. So to kind of work towards least dense to most dense, just to make sure that I'm answering the question across the board, the single family have 2.5 or 3 car garages per house for both the villas and the single family. The townhouse have either 2 garage spots or 2 surface spots behind, so there's guest spots. For the multifamily, again, we started with the center of the master plan, the 2 buildings right in the middle. Those are the most developed and defined. The 4 in the southwest corner, we're continuing to coordinate with the city. Since this, we've done an iteration that moves a lot of the parking from the surface into the first floor of the building to allow a larger amount of parking for to be covered and inside. Ongoing coordination with that. But our intention is to provide market rate, expectations, high level of what anyone in the community would want to be in a multifamily residential situation.
Also, the delivery of trucks that are bringing stuff in, how they can get around and service your area. I see some potential traffic problems with that type of service.
So we've coordinated closely to this point with the mail delivery. We have mail delivery kiosks. For the multifamily buildings, we have drop-off areas, designated move-in areas. Again, it's more developed in the first pairing, but we plan to apply the same logic and the same level of quality and expectation for the number of units to make sure that it's not burdensome to the function of the building.
Katie, if I could add, each one of these roads that has a number on it, it says Road 1, Road 2, et cetera, those have been designed in accordance with engineering requirements. So all of those are considered public streets with the exception of one. So those are going to be ones that the engineering department has helped in terms of the design. The alleyways, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, are all going to be at least 16 feet.
With aprons on either side.
With aprons on either side. So, and there's also going to be on-street parking that is going to be providing some of the relief, if you will, for visitors. It's also going to be providing some of the required parking for, as we said, mailboxes. So those are going to be kind of striped areas where mail delivery trucks themselves and people who are going to be going to the kiosks would be parking in order to obtain their mail. As far as deliveries are concerned, those are actually going to be handled just as any other neighborhood delivery would happen. So there would likely be delivery trucks that would be parking momentarily on the on-street parking and then providing that walk-up service to those individual units. And in the multifamily residential, correct me if I'm wrong again, those are going to be handled just like any other apartment complex where the mail service would be interior to the building itself.
With response to the question about parking, I'm sorry. Doug Seymour, Director of Community Development, City of Oak Creek, 8040 South 6th Street. With respect to the question regarding parking, for the single family, for the villas, I believe that, there is, as was mentioned earlier, the required parking, both enclosed in the attached garages, and there's additional street parking. Where we've had some concern, quite frankly, is in the multifamily buildings, and the 2 that are being developed in the first phase are the most kind of refined at this point. And they, in all fairness, do not meet our code requirement for parking based on the number of bedrooms. That being said, we have been working with the development team to maximize parking where available and to maximize enclosed or structured parking within not only those 2 multifamily buildings, but the future multifamily buildings that are being proposed. And you'll see in the conditions and restrictions that you'll be reviewing at your next meeting that there is going to be some discussion about it. Well, how do we plan for contingencies should that the parking need exceed that which we're showing in the plan? And I believe that's at 1.4 spaces per unit. So there's again, based on bedroom count, that's a little bit light. Based on, comparable developments in the area, that's also a little bit light. So we're concerned about that. We're working through some issues with that, but just know that, we're looking at ways to maximize the parking if need be. And to that point, I mean, nobody wants to see a huge parking lot that's not used. So we want to make sure that we get the parking right. Any other questions I can answer while I'm up here?
I do have one. I don't know if it's right way.
Oh, sorry.
We'll go
I
online.
I didn't want to
Go ahead.
circumvent your process here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, since we're talking about the parking here, is there public parking? Is there public amenities that the public can go in and use, especially at the lakefront?
Yeah, I mean, all the public streets are, that's not assigned to any individual owner or user. All the public streets are public parking. Now, the lots, for example, and the apron spaces, those obviously will be assigned towards either the multifamily, the renters or the occupants of the villas or the single family, the townhomes. But I mean, if it's a public street and there's parking, it's public.
So when that's the case, how is that taking into account for public usage for parking versus residential? Because that can a little bit overlap, and the residential, especially if they're light, they're gonna go ahead and use the
Sure,
public one.
and when we've, based on our experience, we know that that's gonna happen, whether it's at Drexel Town Square or any number of multifamily developments in the city. I mean, we can only make sure that there's adequate parking so that we're not forcing people to park out on the street, and certainly, if you park on the street, you're gonna be subject to the parking requirements that are in place for the city, i.e. winter parking. I mean, it's not, overnight, it's not gonna be allowed. So, I mean, you can't rely on the public parking to satisfy demand, but you can rely on it to supplement that demand.
Correct, we just have to make sure that we have adequate parking for
Yep.
the structures in order for us not to overlap and prevent parking, allowed public parking in those communities.
Yep.
Like you said, you're light already, so that's kind of a questionable.
Yep.
Okay, I have a question about population density of this. How does that compare to our city standards?
Well, I'll certainly, and I'll speak on behalf of staff, I mean, this is a much more dense development in terms of units per acre than we've seen anywhere else in the city, with the exception of possibly Drexel Town Square. And that's by design. I mean, walkable communities, traditional neighborhoods typically do exhibit much higher densities, and that creates, quite honestly, for better, more walkable neighborhoods. This, again, the concept behind this is to have something that's a little bit less maintenance intensive for the owner. And by the same token, you're sacrificing space on your unit, or I'll call it a parcel at this point, although there'll be condominiums. You're sacrificing that space in favor of a much more amenity-rich environment surrounding you that's kind of more common open space. But you're right. I mean, this is not going to be like a typical Oak Creek subdivision, because it's not a typical Oak Creek subdivision. This is a neighborhood.
But I thought we still had some requirements or regulations on the population density in the city.
Yeah, I mean, the PUD and the traditional neighborhood development really allows for increased densities, again, to achieve some of those things that we're talking about with respect to community and walkability. So this will be fully in accordance with the traditional neighborhood development zoning that this commission recommended, that the council adopted, and those specific standards will be in the PUD that you'll see in 2 weeks.
Commissioner Siepert, if you turn to the T&D PUD standards regarding minimum density per net acre and maximum density per net acre, that'll give you an idea of what the T&D PUD allowances are, and this is in conformance with those allowances. So permitted residential uses for single-family detached, single-family attached, and multifamily.
Okay.
Those minimums and maximums are met by this plan.
So we've actually written the standards to fit the applicant.
We've written the standards such that they can be amenable to a development plan that everybody is hoping to achieve. And we did have some back and forth on those minimums and maximums to ensure that the development is something that everybody is comfortable with promoting. So it is specific to this development per se, but it was with significant staff input
And it's specific to this development, but it was based on standards that have been at least promoted statewide by I believe it's the Department of Administration with respect to traditional neighborhood developments and based on a model ordinance that was prepared and has been in use across the state.
And with the exception of really the multifamily and maybe one other category, these are not very far off from what our current density standards are if they were per lot. The difference with this particular development is that it's condoized. So all of the parcels that are involved are common ownership. But the densities are pretty much closer to what code is going to be required in the zoning code update, as well as current code with the one exception, and possibly two, of the multifamily.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Yeah, are the streets, are they all going to be controlled by the city, the streets themselves maintaining and so forth, or is that by an association?
Actually, both. The public streets, which were identified, and I think we've got an exhibit showing that, the major streets will be dedicated to the city, maintained by the city. The alleyways and one of the private streets in the southeast corner of the development, certainly the parking lots and things of that nature, those will all be private and maintained privately. The city will not be plowing alleys. The city will not be collecting garbage or recycling for this development. That's all private. The city will be taking on some maintenance responsibilities under an agreement with respect to some of the common open space areas and trails, as well as some of the regional stormwater detention areas.
Okay. And that's spelled out in the standards?
It'll be spelled out in the PUD, as well as there are separate infrastructure development agreements and finance development agreements that cover all of the responsibilities of all the parties involved with respect to this development.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Do we know the garages in the alleyways? How big is, it looks like, I'm trying to find a rendering, but it looks kind of like there's a little bit of an apron before the alleyway. Do we have a picture or any kind of rendering of the backside?
Did not include that in this presentation, but there's 4 feet on either side of the alley in all conditions.
4 feet from the alley to the garage?
Correct.
Okay, because the one thing that concerns me, I don't know if anybody's ever lived where they had their garage on an alley. Snow plowing can be a nightmare, and it sounded like Doug said that it's all going to be taken care of privately. However, I don't know if the city has worked with you on what the plan is to plow the snow, not just throw it off to the side and then everyone's digging out their garages.
Yep, there's a diagram if you're able to pull it up. I can talk until you find that. There's designated areas identified. We also have the fences. Excuse me. Even though the fences are an optional upgrade in most situations, if there's a fence, it's pushed back off of the alley to allow for collection areas between the garage spaces.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you. Fences.
There's an opportunity for single-family homes and villas to have fences on the alley side, rear fences. And if that's the case, they're not held right up against the alley to promote, putting snow over your neighbor's fence. We have allocated areas between, if you zoom in on the green square in the upper left corner, that just shows that identifies the typical condition at single-family homes.
I'm sorry, where?
To the right a little bit. Yeah, right there. So between the garages. So we have we have typical 2-car garages. We're limiting the per block the addition of 2.5 and 3-car garages to allow space between them for those collection areas. So I know that represents a typical, but if you applied that to each, in between each house, that would be the case.
Okay, collection areas for snow. So, is that what you mean by collection areas? Correct. All right. So, I just want to follow you. Collection areas for snow by a plow or for when individuals are shoveling? Because I'm not seeing how a plow would, they'd have to kind of turn it in there and shove it in. Is that the thought?
That is the thought.
Okay. All right. That's the only question I have.
Commissioner Krill?
Couple questions. Knowing the land a little bit, I'm assuming there are no basements on houses?
At this stage, the only buildings that are, have basements are the two multifamily buildings that are more developed in the center of the site. And even those are half exposed based on the relatively extreme grading on the site. So on the north side, you have almost the full basement exposed, and on the south side, they're completely concealed. So they look like 3- and 4-story buildings on the south. The single families do not, due to the conditions of the soils on the lot, we're being very respectful and coordinate with the DNR to make sure that we're not altering the interim grading that's being done in the first phase of horizontal infrastructure construction.
And so there is no underground parking for the big,
For the, no single families, villas, clubhouse, townhouses, they're all slab on grade or they have crawl spaces. And then the multifamily, the big blue buildings in the center, those have partially exposed basements.
for parking?
For parking.
Okay.
Yep, and then the 4 multifamily buildings in the southwest corner, currently, the way that we have them conceptually rendered, have first floor parking, no basements.
So the apartment buildings on that, will there be one spot per unit
We,
underground?
we're working through that, what that number is, but right now, we have is maximized interior or covered parking, and then there's surplus exterior surface parking. So if you zoom in on the A9 block a little bit, you can see that there's a lot to the north of the north building or the northwest building right there, and then the access that gets you into the garage of the south building, we have the parking, thank you, Carrie. Behind the townhouses also has a string of parking. So maximize interior and the surpluses surface.
Okay, because, I mean, we all know that 4th of July or, or just people using that, that park, have a lack of parking for the park.
Sure.
So I'm thinking that they're going to find this and use this, and if there's not even one underground parking per stall, we just need to look at that.
These will be, every stall will be assigned. That's not a visitor parking or an employee parking. So they'd be striped, similar to other multifamily projects we've done, like Parterre and Emerald Row on this site, or Forge and Flare. They, even if it's surface, this is your stall, and there will be a protocol with management to make sure that that's enforced.
Okay, because I live at Forge and Flare, and, and we are allowed 2 spaces.
Okay.
So we have ample parking under the, so that, the street parking here isn't usually an issue.
Sure.
So just know that that park is always, whenever there's anything going on, there's not enough parking in that park as it is, that they will find.
Right.
We will.
Right, and I know Parterre, we had the similar concerns, so we have the large garage underneath and then a few wood frame buildings above. For this, this is more similar to Emerald Row, where you have the parking just follow the footprint of the buildings. It's really every project that we do, it's the balance between density, parking, and construction cost, and making sure that we can make it a feasible project to construct.
One other question real quick. You mentioned these homes are on MLS listed already, for the land?
Nothing, yes, they're not available for purchase. There's a reservation process. So we're gathering names and making sure that when the time comes, there's so much work to be done before houses are put on the site. All the roads and infrastructure need to be installed.
That's why I was surprised.
Right. We just want to get ahead of it for phase 1, make sure that there's interest on the street, make sure that we're showcasing the best sites. We're working with the team early to make sure that it's the most successful it can be.
Okay,
Most of my questions or comments have been brought up. The one I'd like to bring up and kind of reiterate would be what Carrie had on the high-quality siding. Remember about a month ago, we did have apartment complex that came in that we did require them to remove that type of material, so I just want to reiterate that we would prefer, if not prefer is more of a stronger word, we don't like siding.
It's a rather
unacceptable
large
material.
red X
Yep,
there.
that big large red X, so when it comes forward in the conditions and restrictions, let's just make sure that we don't have to rehatch that.
Sure.
Okay, let me beat the same issue of the parking. I'm extremely concerned with that, especially there is not much space for both public usage and residents. So I don't know if you have considered to do a parking structure, maybe in the back where a lot is not as expensive as it be depending on the views and other than that. So maybe a parking structure that owners can have still designated slots. They can use it for their visitors or for any other type of usage they have. Family grows, so they may start with one, but they can go to 2 or 3. So this is something that needs to be considered. Again, we don't want to see the overlap between residents and public. When public doesn't find parking, they will go park illegal, and that's going to create some potential safety concerns and public concerns. So this something has to be very closely looked at. Now, I heard someone talking about the snow plowing and where they're gonna be stored at the terrace or not. How about the alleys? When you say there is fences optional, how about the next door who doesn't want fence? Everything is gonna be stored in his backyard or back porch or whatever that may be? Where is it gonna be? Who's gonna control that?
There's a datum, despite if there's a fence or not, there's a datum for how we would attach to fences or how they would align to one another. Sorry?
I don't think.
The diagram that we zoomed in on the upper left corner, that was actually at the alley. So if you look at the just north zone, we have the fronts of the houses on public streets.
Sorry, I'm not following.
Sorry, let me just get to it.
Okay.
Perfect. So that top row of villas, they're pairs. It's a little hard to read on this diagram, I apologize. The north is just a sidewalk, and then between is the alley where that green box is. Thank you. So the alley is where the snow plows will collect, and then in between where Road 2 is, that's a public street. So the snow plows will be public on the public streets and private on the private streets and alleys.
So where the blue on the left side and that where it says between garages, this is the alley, correct?
This is the alley, correct?
Okay, so where the snow is gonna be stored?
If I duplicated those green boxes between each of these pairs, you'd have, 70 boxes in this zone that would be the area designated for snow collection.
Okay, so who's gonna do that?
Off of the alleys, it's all private from the association.
Exactly, so it's private owners who's gonna do this, and this is their designated place to put their snow?
This is a very atypical project where most of the maintenance, well, all of the maintenance, correct me if I'm wrong, is done by the association. So the homeowner will not mow their lawn, they will not do their own snow. Everything is controlled and organized from the organization, or the association.
So it's not optional, it's mandatory for?
Correct.
Like condo fees and how many?
Correct.
Typical. Okay, so there are not gonna be any drainage issues with all of those, has been looked at?
Absolutely. We've been working really closely with the civil engineer, making sure that the sites during construction don't affect negatively each other. Final construction, we've looked at making sure that everything is coordinated with the overall concept and that each phase also there's not a problem if you stop in between the phases, that they work throughout the process.
One final question I'm very curious about. Like you said, you're trying to see how much demand on this type of residence. How much did you get into?
We have tons of interest. There's a lot yet to coordinate as far as the upgrade packages, the costs associated with such. Right now, we're building the base scheme to make sure that you can get in with this price, and there's certain options with upgrades based on site location and exposure to the lake. So we're coordinating every single day, but there's tons of interest. There's definitely interest with the townhomes as well that are less developed. That's our next project, their next effort that we're going to put on the website. The website isn't even live yet, so it's still very premature.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Carrie, can you keep that up? I
More questions?
Yeah. So you said if you put those little green boxes in between, what's there when it's not winter? Is that a paved, is that grass?
There's a base that has grass and a certain paved area between the two villas. The little boxes north of the green box are a patio, like a back patio. We have a slab on grade as the base and then a raised wood deck as an option. That is going to be, because there are lacks of backyards, we kind of have this internal courtyard that's, the buildings kind of wrap around, so you have your private space. So it's hard to say because of the upgrade options that are gonna be available, but we have, you know, the base will be grass.
Okay, is that, are they gonna be allowed to have extra parking in those spots?
Absolutely not.
That's gonna have to stay empty?
Correct.
Okay,
No storage.
okay. And is that strictly because of the snow?
Partially also because of, we just wanna control the access for emergency vehicles, making sure
Sure.
that no one can block that.
Okay, and that's not gonna be negotiable, change? Okay,
We'll write it into the condo bylaws.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
There we go. Can you hear me? Okay. A quick question for you, Carrie. So this area today is zoned for multifamily, and we want to rezone it for traditional neighborhood, which means a more dense area for living space?
You're correct that there are multiple zonings for the properties, and it's portions of the properties that would be rezoned to the traditional neighborhood development, PUD. That is a specific zoning district that allows for the multiple uses and the multiple types of residences that we're showing in this PUD specifically.
Okay, so I do have a question for the applicant. So can you provide more information on why the transition from multifamily to traditional neighborhood?
Well, let me just clarify. Portions of the properties are A1, RM1, and B4. So this is bringing it all under one unified zoning district that allows for the multiple residential types, so single family all the way up to multifamily, with the addition of potentially having some commercial space in the first floor of some of those multifamily buildings. So it is a PUD, it is mixed use, but it's mixed residential. It's changing portions from multifamily to this traditional neighborhood development.
So what I'm trying to understand is the transition to traditional neighborhood development, which is quite a bit more dense than most of the areas that we have here with mixed use. I'm just trying to understand the reasoning for the change specifically to traditional neighborhood development.
Well, the traditional neighborhood development zoning district allows us to have more than just multifamily as part of the options for the housing types. It also allows us to do some things that, while not necessarily commercially dense like Drexeltown Square is, it does allow for a denser neighborhood development that is mostly residential. But we don't have prior to establishing the traditional neighborhood development, which actually was in our code, it just didn't have the standards that we applied to it until recently. That allows us to have much more of this mix of unit type. We didn't have anything that would allow us to do this previously.
And I understand the mixed unit type. I'm just trying to get a better understanding of why it's so dense. Why is there a desire to have the multifamily or the different units for living space so dense?
I think part of it, and Katie, jump in whenever you feel fit, part of it is trying to achieve the options that we're missing in the city. We're trying to get at a specific demographic that we feel is missing. As far as the denser and the smaller, I won't call them lots, but I'll call them, pads, shall we say. It's trying to get at more of the walkable neighborhood, kind of creating a walkable traditional neighborhood. It's a little bit, I won't say unique, but it's a little bit different than what we've seen in Oak Creek in recent years. So it's creating that unit mix that isn't just your traditional subdivision. It isn't just your side-by-sides. It isn't just multifamily. It allows for the different demographics. It allows for the different price points, that allows for people to come into this this development and maybe start in the multifamily and move your way up. We don't have anywhere in the city that has the townhouse options that we're seeing here. We certainly don't have any side by side, the 3-unit villas that we are seeing here. So it allows us to go at what is kind of a hole in our current housing. And Katie, feel free to kind of comment on the design of this. But that's where we're coming from, I think, at least with the types of housing that's being provided here.
And to the density, both Doug and I alluded to earlier, is the reduced, or the more dense area, the reduced personal space. You have much more common areas, and it's a community. It's a development, but everyone has access to these common areas that will, the walkability, the street use, the amenities, all common for everyone to use.
My only concern, I hear what you're saying, that there are areas that are common, yet it appears, and maybe I just need more information, there aren't a lot of those areas. It seems to be a lot of buildings, a lot of livable space. There is quite a bit of walking space and road space, but the areas, the common areas seem to be a smaller number based on the density of people that will be there. And then you have the other piece where it's not only the people living there, you also have people that are coming there to be on the lake. So that's a lot of people in this area. That's just my concern. I just want to get a better understanding.
Sure, each of the dots on the screen is representative of a special area. So along this path, there's nodes of pocket parks, dog park. We have access to recreational areas, seating areas, areas with water collection and gardening. And it's each one. It's a path that offers a smattering of options for amenities. It's not just a path. We feel that the amenities in this project are so plentiful that they will sell the lots. You get access to the lake in a way that no other development has in Oak Creek, and you also have this interconnected system of amenities throughout the site.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah. This is more for Doug and possibly Carrie. Has the city thought about exploring options for more parking around the park area, just to mitigate? I agree with Dawn. People will find their ways onto these streets and park there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, certainly, and we're under no illusions, this will not solve the parking problem for the 4th of July, or a beer garden. We need to find a solution to that independent of this. When we first set out to do this, and I think we may have had the discussion, we're not out to build a subdivision here. We're out to build a neighborhood. And that's why you've got kind of those integration concepts with respect to the open space. But having said that, we know that the Lake Vista Park and the lakefront is very popular and will continue to be popular as we continue to make investments in the public realm there. And yes, knowing that full well and fully expecting that this will be very successful, we are looking at opportunities adjacent to this, primarily in the North Bluff area, across there's kind of a ravine there that serves as the access to the water utility lift station, or the water station there. Mm-hmm. And as those properties enter their kind of redevelopment phase, we're very cognizant of the need for additional parking there for not only events, but just to serve everything that happens there on a regular basis. So you're absolutely correct. We know that. We are working on that, and I think that certain of the environmental conditions on some of those properties lend themselves very well to additional parking. where maybe there are areas that you probably wouldn't want to develop, you know, some of the neighborhood concepts that we see here, but they may work great as a parking lot.
Yep, that's fine. Yeah, just as a resident who most likely probably won't be living there, I'd still like to go down there, and I want to know that the city's thinking about me too.
Yep.
And they're giving me a place to park and, you know, bring my family down there. And that's all I'm kind of driving at, I guess.
I also have a question for you, Doug.
Sure.
About all this development growth, what about the road pattern that we have? Fifth Avenue, for example, right now is not the most quality street we have in the city. We're probably going to have to take a look at some of the road patterns to and from of the area.
Yeah, absolutely, Commissioner. I mean, Lakeshore Commons is part of TID 13, which is a really large TID along the lakefront. And that TID was established with not in mind, not for just, you know, we're going to fund this development, we're going to fund that development. We are going to transform the lakefront and the lakefront neighborhoods into something that, you know, obviously something that we haven't had over the last 50 years. We're going to open that up, make it accessible to the public, and that includes the neighborhoods, the existing neighborhoods that are out there. And we are fully prepared via the project plan for TID 13 to make improvements to those areas outside of Lakeshore Commons, whether it be improvements to Fifth Avenue for walkability or for just for traffic purposes, or whether it again is some of those areas outside of this in Bender Park, or whether it's areas that are preparing the North Bluff area and additional parkland for the public's use, or whether it's some additional infrastructure development that will open up additional areas along the lakefront for development commensurate with with the vision that we all have for that. So yeah, this isn't, you know, we don't have blinders on. You know, this is a very, very, very deliberate plan based on a lot of public input that's taken place over the last decade.
Well, we also have the development just north of this that we recently purchased, that 46 acres.
Yep, we did.
But we have to take that into consideration, the road pattern and the construction.
Yeah, absolutely. And where you see, and I call it the North Bluff, it's everything between Lakeshore Commons and the Peter Cooper site, which you're right, the city is entering into a purchase and sale agreement for the remainder of that parcel. We already own the property along the lakefront. We will take our time and be very deliberate about planning that area, much like we did with the South Bluff area, and we'll make sure that whatever develops there is consistent with the vision for the lakefront, and we'll, again, you know, whether it's, we need additional parking, that might be part of it. You know, we've talked about, well, was there a need for maybe some new type of technology park there? That's, you know, I don't know that that's the case, but I mean, those are types of things that we'll explore in more depth as we take a finer line towards how this area might potentially develop. That area, again, the North Bluff, I would say is probably 10 years behind where the Lake Vista Park, where Lakeshore Commons is. And I think this process provides a really good metric and a path forward for how we approach development of that North Bluff area. It's just, we have the benefit of being a lot more patient with those properties.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Alderman Lord?
Yes.
This is more of a comment and
Sure.
kind of to supplement what Doug just stated. Through the development of the TIF 13 out there, we were tasked out of engineering to look at Fifth Avenue, all the way from basically where we ended our new construction, all the way to Pewits Road, as far as what would be required, dollar-wise, size-wise, capacity. So we've been tasked with that. We have looked at that. We have provided our dollar figures, which were included in the development of TID 13. So we are, like Doug said, we are thinking about it, starting to plan for it, things going in line. As far as parking, we've also been tasked at looking at different areas within Lake Vista for overflow events. The one thing that does create issues within those areas are stormwater, the environmental impacts, being the type of soils we'd have to deal with, we've looked at a number of options and I've provided those to the city administrator. So we are, like Doug said, something that we're not pushing aside. We are thinking about this and trying to find other funding mechanisms, different sources to be able to create these areas and provide what the public really needs. We are continuing to work with everyone to make sure that this park is successful. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you to the commission. That was a lot of great discussion, a lot of good questions. Just adding my 2 cents. I do love the look. I love the feel of the concept of this. I grew up in the city. I would move here in a heartbeat. I don't know that I could talk my kids and wife into giving up a backyard at this point. But I would love to live in a community like this. I fully understand that this isn't for everybody, but there is a market for this. Based on the response that you've received so far, it sounds like that there's a lot of interest for something like this. It does add a sort of diversity to the housing in Oak Creek. It might allow people that are looking for this type of development to move to the city. I understand that parking is a challenge. As I said, growing up in the city, I knew if I got home late, I'd be parking around the block and walking home. It sounds like there is more parking here than in a typical city with the larger garages. And obviously the parking lots around the apartment complexes. So I don't want to continue to harp on the parking. I trust that staff is continuing to work with the developer on that. A couple questions that did come up. So even the single family homes, this is a traditional, I guess, condo association. No exterior modification by the owners. Is that correct?
The condo association will have strict architecture. Oh, I'm sorry, again? Okay, Jessica Guzman, F Street Development Group, 1134 North 9th Street in Milwaukee. The condo association will have an architectural review board, so that will kind of outline up to a point what exterior modifications are allowed to be made. As of now, we're not allowing, there are a restricted number, of paint options you can choose for your exterior and materials and things like that. You cannot add a flagpole or other things like that. So anything that you do to your home must go through the condo association, and they'll have full control.
Okay, so that would cover, I know the patio and deck option was brought up, and that's obviously an option when it's being built.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody decides down the road that they want to add a deck where there wasn't one, that would fall under that as well.
Exactly.
As far as the landscape and streetscape, is there between sidewalk and street, is there a grass line that you typically see in the city, or a tree line?
Katie Menakis, Rinka, 756 North Milwaukee Street in Milwaukee. The landscape, there's certain requirements identified in the traditional neighborhood development guidelines as well as the PUD. We have a minimum spacing of trees that we're working with, streetscape trees, minimum parking screening, islands required for parking, trees and shading. It is definitely something that we want to make sure that we amplify and highlight the use and the walkability of the street. So yes, it's being considered, it's being coordinated. We have special nodes through the amenity spaces that we do special plantings.
Thank you. And then being an alderman and hearing from residents in Oak Creek a lot, I know a question that's going to be brought up is ownership versus rental. Am I correct that the multifamily are rental and everything else will be owners, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that was, other than what was covered by everybody else, that was all my questions I have. Again, I really like this idea. I think it'll be successful in Oak Creek. It's clear that there's a market for it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be pursuing this. So I wish you luck and hope it's successful in Oak Creek. Thank you. Any other questions, concerns from anybody? If not, we'll look.
Alderman Lorig, just want to make it clear in the conditions and restrictions if this moves forward, there's going to be something regarding phasing. You'll note in your plans that there are identifiers for different phases for the development. Just keep in mind that because most of this, about approximately 40% of the development is the kind of single-family type development, this is going to be a phasing program that is probably lengthier than any phasing program we have seen in the city thus far, at least for a PUD consideration. It will be closer to what we see for a single-family residential subdivision in terms of time and length of time that they're going to be allowed to construct this. Each phase will probably have some benchmarks like we've seen in other PUDs, but I just want the commission to understand that if you see a length of time in the conditions and restrictions for time of compliance that is multi-year for each phase, that is why. This is going to be something that is a development that will be taking place like a single-family subdivision. So the first phase is probably one of the largest phases actually in the whole development, but that includes quite a bit of the road infrastructure, includes the utilities and things like that. So you will see something like that. I just want to make sure that everybody is not shocked whenever they see that time frame.
Thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll look for a motion on item 7D.
Oldani moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that portions of the properties at 4001 East Lake Vista Parkway, 9300 South Fifth Avenue, 4200 East Lake Vista Boulevard be rezoned to traditional neighborhood development plan unit development after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the commission's review at their next meeting, September 28th, 2021.
Second.
Grillo, second.
Roll call, starting with Commissioner Oldani.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Hannah, no.
Sullivan, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye. Okay. Announcements and adjournments. The announcements, farmer's market? Typically what you talk about.
No, we have a good farmer's market coming up. And then we have Cafe Day, Mill Creek on October 2nd. Oh, it's at the farmer's market. There's more information online on the website.
Okay, and with that, we'll move to adjournment.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 7:22.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, starting with Commissioner Siebert.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye. Hannah, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.